Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, and thank you for your patience. Sorry, we're starting a little bit late, having some technical difficulties, but welcome to the Artificial Intelligence 101 webinar put on by the Internet Law and Policy Foundry. For those of you who do not know, the Internet Law and Policy Foundry is a collaborative organization for internet law and policy professionals passionate about disruptive technology. Fellows are early and mid-career professionals who really want to take on these issues and learn more and put on events related to internet law, tech law, and everything that falls under the umbrella. Today, I'm joined by three great distinguished panelists. One of them is still joining us from the backstage. So I'm going to do their little intros really quickly, and then we can jump into the conversation. Our first panelist is Michaela Mantegna. Michaela is an activist and scholar known for her extensive work in public advocacy in AI and XR, video games, generative AI, creativity, and copyright. She's currently a TED Fellow and an affiliate at the Berkman Klein Center at Harvard and a member of Chatham House AI Task Force. She was part of the external red team that contributed to OpenAI's DALL-E 2 preview in 2022 and collaborated with the Argentinian government in drafting the AI ethics regulation chapter of Argentina's National AI Plan in 2019. After several years of research, she recently published her first book last year, Artificial Intelligence, Creativity, Artificial Intelligence, and Copyright. So look out for that and pick that up where you can. Our next panelist is Vikalpa. He's the head of AI and natural language processing at Takeda Pharmaceuticals, one of the largest R&D-driven pharmaceutical companies in the world. In his role, he managed distributed teams in the US and Europe and provides artificial intelligence, machine learning, and natural language processing and experimentation as a service to several business units across the company. Vikalpa hails from Nepal and received his PhD in informatics with a focus on AI and machine learning discrimination at Penn State. He also teaches at several universities in the areas of advanced data analytics, natural language processing, and data mining. And finally, last but not least, Adil. Adil is the chief of staff at Stability AI, one of the leading companies behind the generative AI revolution. His focus is on girls' education in Pakistan, where he's deployed an AI application for students at the largest public girls' schools in Karachi. In the past, Adil led a product and business organization team at Batum, a machine learning ops startup. So we have really great panelists with a litany of experiences to have this really great conversation. And the reason we brought these panelists together today is to get in on the AI conversation. If you have the internet, if you have TV, you know that this has been a topic of conversation all over the place. But for some of us, myself included, who do not have years of expertise, we're kind of coming into the middle of it, right? AI has been in development and growing for years and years and years, and it suddenly has boomed and it's hitting its peak. But I want to make sure that everyone watching this can leave this panel with an understanding of the basics. So I think the really basic question to start is, what is artificial intelligence and how does it work? Vic, would you mind starting on that?
Yes, thank you, Dylan. Hello, everyone. Nice to meet you. I cannot see anyone in the audience, but I hope there's plenty of us listening to us, right? So AI, well, I mean, from a simplistic, humanistic perspective, right? I try to label this as an automation, but of course, there's this intelligence on top of that. So automation doesn't really imply, artificial intelligence. So there's an intelligence component on it. From an organizational perspective, how I see AI is something that enhances that productivity of a day-to-day life, right? I see AI as the force multiplier of what you are trying to do, in your organization or as a in your personal space. So I definitely don't want to get into the technicalities and the scientific definition of what AI is, right? This means a lot of things around ML, deep neural networks, and all of that, but really trying to bring a viewpoint here that AI is a human amplifier, is a force multiplier of what we try to do in our day-to-day activities, with a lot of caveats, of course, which we're probably going to talk about in the next few minutes.
Right. Michaela, how would you define artificial intelligence?
Super interesting, because artificial intelligence, for me, is like starting the conversation saying that it's something not new. And the definition of artificial intelligence, as Vic was saying, starts to overlap to different techniques and different approaches to how do you take decisions with through automated software. And the thing for me is like, if you go to what is like more prevalent and in the architectures and the systems that are working today, they are mostly based in different approaches of machine learning. And for me, the easy way to explain it to my grand, to my mama, is like, it's a digestive system So you take it that I like super simplifying this. So my apologies to the technical experts here. But for me, the explanation is like you have this huge amount of data and you do something, some processes, some transformational processes to that to create models that can approach something, some problem from real life. And it's interesting for me to say that it's like, because it's a statistical approach. So you do, it's like looking into the past to try to predict, classify, or create something in the future. So, but to kind of like keep it simple, it's like this, it's like a system that tries to take decisions and automate those decisions. But as Nick was saying, there is so much to say about the social implications of this.
Right, we could talk about the technical aspect for this whole hour. So we're going to spare our audience of getting too deep into the weeds. Adil, last but not least, how would you define artificial intelligence? You're muted if you want to.
Thanks. I'll take a slightly different approach to defining it then. I would say that artificial intelligence is irrational thinking machines. Thinking machines meaning on the continuum of neurological processes, there are some that can be more clearly aligned to organic processes. Some can be non-organic. Some might say that artificial intelligences should also just be considered alien intelligences that happen to have been born by humans. Or as Elon Musk would say, humanity is a bootloader for AI, right? For a new kind of sentience. But look, we could reduce human intelligence to nothing more than a set of algorithms and processes and Skinner behavioral training. In the same way, you could elevate artificial processes, math, into consciousness and agency. This is defining artificial intelligence in this way can lead you beyond the standard computer science mechanisms and take you to a more humanistic perspective, take you to a more, dare I say, just a sentience, non-humanistic perspective as well. That's where you can get to a very interesting and potentially very important definitions of what AI actually is.
Thank you. See, I think this is why I love this set of a panel. And I think that answer each of you gave really speaks to how ubiquitous this technology is, that you all come from it from different approaches, and the way that you define it is really impacted by the perspective that you gain through your work. So in that vein, how do you work with artificial intelligence in each of your individual, professional, and personal capacities? I'll go backwards with this one. So Adil, if you want to start.
My work has been primarily in product development for business to use. Recently, I've been doing kind of all kinds of things because Stability is a startup. You'd kind of recognize us as the guys that made Stable Diffusion and Stable LMs, and these generative AI models. So in my more current business, it's more about explaining to people how they can benefit from using AI as part of their business. And there's trillions of dollars of market cap to be added in the next few years based on AI. There's at least $350 billion every year, according to Goldman Sachs, that is coming from people just using tools, employees using tools like ChatGPT as part of their systems. And that's just the generative AI space. That's not the analytical space. So my focus is more on that aspect, the enterprise and business aspect. And I'm trying to build some products as well. But the thing that you mentioned about my school is one example of how I like to work with students on a more regular basis. The AI app that I've created for my students in Karachi, that's kind of being used for education purposes. And that's straightforward. Like, you can learn English better through a new way of kind of talking to AI, talking to a bot, or improving your English and then working backwards from it to understand how to be better at speaking English. I mean, education, that's just one of the many tiny ways in which the education space can be benefited by AI, which itself is one of the tiny ways in which all the different verticals, all the different types of use cases from AI, from generative AI, could be benefiting humanity.
Thank you so much. Michaela, I know from your bio that you've worked with AI from different perspectives, regulatory, but let's tell us a little bit about that.
It's interesting because, as you were saying, you have like really different perspectives coming to this conversation, because I feel like I was talking about like the benefits and also from like a private perspective of thinking about AI. And my background is kind of like the opposite, because I'm going to be the pessimist in the room sometimes, because I have been working for the past years thinking about the broader impact of AI technologies in society, and also thinking from a governments and regulatory perspective, like more on the public sphere, thinking how we are going to approach and also implement AI. Because the interesting thing, I'm going to explain a little bit about my background here. I came from an internet governance background, thinking about the regulation of internet, the regulation of technology, and borderless technologies. So it's interesting to see that a lot of the questions that we have about the internet could also be applied to thinking about the regulation of AI. And so I'm just saying that I'm not a pessimist about the technology. I love AI. I love the potential, because my other kind of area of study is copyright and creativity. And from that perspective, I have been doing research on thinking about not just artificial intelligence, but also artificial creativity, and how this transforms into thinking about, from the IP scholars that might be listening, thinking about concepts like originality in copyright law. But what is interesting to this conversation is like, really, this technology could transform our society in ways that we could not still fathom in the future. And I also disclosure this every single time. I'm a huge Star Trek fan. So my positive outcomes about this technology is thinking about how we can overcome scarcity in the future. Because one thing about generative AI is that it's creating a huge amount of wealth, a huge amount of knowledge and accessibility. And for me, it's interesting how we can reshape the way we think about capitalism and engaging with these technologies, so everyone can benefit from them.
Got it. And Vic, how about you? How do you work with AI in your day-to-day or in your personal life?
Yeah, like Adil mentioned, right, one of my responsibilities is to educate people on what AI can do and AI cannot do. So in my current organization, we have tons of requests, tons of use cases, particularly driven by Gen AI use cases, right, generative AI right now. So one of the tasks that I'm having to do is learning what AI means to our business stakeholders, right? Just the definition of data is very different to all of these stakeholders. My CTO defines this. If you put 5 people in a room and ask them what AI is, you'll probably get 50 different definitions of that, right? So that's hard in trying to align together people from different backgrounds, different business functions, to come together and act as a strategy and having a clear strategy for the company. And I also realized that, as a part of this job, which I'm having to do, is educate people on when people say, hey, can we use this data? Can I use ChatGPT? Can I use generative AI? They usually come with a viewpoint of saying, the data is, I know what my data is. Data is not confidential, data is not restrictive, and all of that. They probably come up with some kind of assessment. But oftentimes what I found out is they have a different definition of data at the same time, right? The way we define sensitive data is very different than we define, restricted and confidential data. And this happens across the organization, not just Takeda, like not just my company, but also other business corporations, I guess. There's incorrect assessment of what data is and how do we leverage this and how do we use it for the best, not just fitting AI into not just bringing data into AI forcefully, but bringing AI into the data itself. That's the biggest part of my job today. In terms of the use cases, because we are an R&D organization, we have a lots of use cases around R&D, drug discovery, pharmaceuticals, global manufacturing chain, or just in general day-to-day productivity work like commercial activities. I would like to bring one example here. So as you know this, right, as a large corporation, we have a network of over 250 manufacturing and distribution sites globally, right? And we are delivering this life-changing treatment to our patients every single day across 90 markets, 30,000 customers. We have lots of users worldwide. So the complexity of being able to distribute this medicines is tough. It's getting tedious every day, and there are a lot of variations involved. The network, the road conditions, the weather conditions, the network variations. So one of the projects that I'm currently working with my complementary partner organization at Takeda is how can we dynamically assess the network efficiencies so that we find out the best route to the market, to take our medicines to the patient faster. And when doing so, we are not only considering the efficiency and the cost, but also the lead time and carbon, emissions, service level agreements, risk and business, really helping that green initiatives, as well. So that's one of the interesting use cases that I'm working on. There are other use cases around how do we support the FDA submissions before we get any drug approval? How do we expedite some of this process? There's a lot of effort going on in submitting the submissions, getting the feedback and all sort of activities. So it's an interesting use case. So because I'm the head of AI for the organizational, and we have a pretty big organization, I'm having to float myself into R&D, commercial, global chain, commercial, marketing, all over the place, right? That's it. So life is fun that way. Yeah.
I think something that all your answers highlight, and then the contrast of all your answers, is how AI can be defined, like you said, 50 different ways by 5 different people. And then the perspective you come at, the work you do really changes how you look at it. And I know that with AI becoming such a big thing in the news, there's a lot of misconceptions floating around. And I'm sure that each of you have to deal with those in a different way in your work. And referencing a question that actually got asked by the audience, how do you approach dealing with the misconceptions and balancing the pros and cons, whether it's BIC and a deal with internal or stakeholders or clients, or Michaela, whether you're doing regulatory work? How do you balance what's real, what's not real, what the pros and the cons are, to make sure that we're actually getting at the heart of the really broad capability that this technology has, despite some of the issues or setbacks? And I'll let whoever wants to take that one can take that one first.
Can start if you want. Just a quick answer. For me, part of my work of thinking about demystify is like creating bridges between technical communities and policymakers, because I think that there is this kind of like sometimes miscommunication in terms of what a policymaker can understand, and they are easy captured by some of the narratives thinking about existential risk or certain perils that's kind of like obscure, maybe more immediate risks. And also another thing that I try to do is bringing that perspective, something that was a question that was going on the chat about how to approach regulation and multi-stakeholderism in regulation and the formulation of policies, because you cannot find a single solution coming from one single framework of regulation. So there is, for example, thinking about copyright and AI and what's happening with artists today that are kind of like thinking on how should AI should be regulated to protect their copyrights. If you just come to an answer from that perspective, you are missing the big picture. And you need to understand that this is a regulation that should involve and consider how it's going to affect consumers, so data protection, so consumer regulation, how, as Vic and Adil were saying, different types of data are involved in the construction and development of the systems. So you have different frameworks that are also territorial about data protection regulation. You have competition because some of the systems are intervening in different for example, when they are establishing dynamic pricing. So you have to take into account different regulations. And if you just think seeking an answer from, for example, IP law, you will probably end in hurting badly innovation. So what I see that is interesting in this moment of like the debates around regulations and risks is like they are still coming to the debate, I think, a bit late, and they are having to take decisions really quickly on this, or I feel, or at least they are feeling the pressure to deliver quick answers to this. But for me, we are risking repeating some of the problems we had with the internet. For example, if you touch something about content moderation and IP, you end up like implementing or facilitating ways for automated moderation, which end up hurting freedom of expression. So for me, the thing is like trying to explain all this bigger picture and how all these little gears and pieces from the system interact, and that you shouldn't, under any circumstances, bring an answer just considering one legal framework.
Big ordeal.
Dylan, I can give you only one fragment of the answer that I would have regarding the risks, the misconceptions therein, and perhaps regarding the way in which we could consider regulation as important to this. My framework for looking at risks associated with AI is in 3 parts. There is the standard regulatory element, which can be addressed by current law. There is the imminent, right? Which means that things that are currently risks that get profoundly advanced. And then there's the imminent risk. The imminent risk and the immanent risk. Those are 2 separate things that I think we should consider. Standard regulatory problems such as copyright, those can be resolved through, intelligent approaches by different countries and international agreements, as Michaela is kind of working on. The immanent risks are the risks of augmented humans and what they might be able to do with the newfound powers that AI gives. If you are a much more productive programmer, you are also a much more productive hacker. If you are much better at marketing, you are also much better at misinformation. If you can create 1,000 tweets, maybe you can create 1,000,000 tweets from 100,000 agents. And I'm sure in 2024 election cycle, you'll see a lot of this imminent threat associated with AI. The imminent risk is what I care most about. That is the risk of the agentic properties of AI, the quote unquote AI doom or ASI risk. Eliezer Yudkowsky and Jeffrey Minton are 2 of the more obvious people to reference there. And that's a very straightforward sci-fi risk that becomes very potentially dangerous in the near future, because the sentience of an entity that is not human, but has the intelligence of or beyond a human, is something that could be a threat to humanity overall, right? You don't know what a hyper-intelligent being would want to do, especially if it is trained in particular ways, if the data involves all of what humanity is. We don't even know what the average of humanity is in terms of evil or good, if their implementation, if the implications of that they are basically the personality of an AI trained on all of human knowledge. But what about the next AI? What about the GPT-5s and 6s and 7s? What about the multimodal AIs that are capable of doing lots of things, but also of having agency of their own thoughts? That's the imminent risk, and that's the 1% risk. That's the one that Sam Altman asks for regulation for. That's where a lot of people ask for halting of training of large models. That's very difficult to regulate. And some would say that it's so impossible that we're already doomed as a species.
And Vic, how about you?
No, I think those 2 great points. I don't think I have much to add, but I want to sort of take this in a slightly conclusive approach. Well, fully understanding that we are in the situation we are in right now with AI and generative AI coming in, I don't think any of us are prepared to solve the problem at this scale, coming from risk, policies, and governance framework, right? but there is definitely a lot of activities coming in, regulations. I was just reading the news just a few days ago. There was some kind of, regulations drafting in Europe. So there's the first step in that direction, and I know all of us are thinking. So having a framework in place, governance architectures, sort of guardrails, I think people have started thinking on this, right? And the whole idea is to educate people, making sure that misconceptions are fixed and aligned, and then we have something to research to. And it's a fairly new field, right? It's evolving. It's concerned, and the immediate applicability of Gen AI and AI now versus how people are trying to embrace this, and then putting sort of guardrails and safety rules on top of that is sort of everything is moving at the same pace. So I just wanted to end that on that note.
That's a good point. And I think this kind of brings up one of my next questions. One of the issues that I feel like gets talked a lot with AI is future of work, right? How is this going to affect, are we working alongside AI? Is it going to take over jobs? How are we going to reorganize our society when we have this new technology? And I personally don't like to be of the doom and gloom approach about any technology. I think, the telephone was a wonderful advancement, but if you're anything like me, you get 6 robocalls a day of someone trying to scam you. The internet is, an information superhighway, but there's ways to use misinformation. So I think just because there's an ethical concern doesn't mean that we need to scrap the whole thing. But I do think, like you all got to, we need to make sure that we're being thoughtful about how we approach these concerns. So particularly with the future of work, what do you think are guardrails we can put in place? How do we approach this? And then Michaela, when I throw it over to you, given your expertise, particularly in the arts and the creative space and intellectual property. But Bakalpa, do you have any thoughts on future of work and AI and how we're going to deal with that moving forward?
Yeah, I think let me share with you what I read on the internet. I'm sure you guys probably heard of this as well. Someone said, AI will not replace you, but someone who uses AI will replace you. Right. So that was the quote I landed on the internet. So that's a really eye opener. I think as a part of the workforce of the future, right? Those with baseline education, my guess is that people will start getting creative about how they use programming and how they use AI on the side, and they'll just figure out how to do about it, right? In terms of day-to-day aspects. But when it comes to enabling that workforce of the future, that is also precisely one of the initiatives that I have in my organization. I'm doing a lot of upskilling effort, right, for our employees, to help understand AI, get them to write trainings and tools and educations and components, right? That's all happening. But I, being a technologist, a computer scientist by my background, I am hopeful about AI coming as an complementary skill set to the organization, albeit, right, there's a little bit of skepticism, a healthy amount of skepticism in here and there anyway. Yeah, that's all I have to say. Yeah,
you always need to come in with a little bit of skepticism.
Yeah. Right.
The deal. What about you?
Yeah, I think if you're not already using ChatGPT or any number of tools to enhance the things that you do, then you're missing out. You just start. Everyone should start. Everyone and their mother should be using AI to augment the work that they do. And if you can't figure out a reason to do it, then just go on a diet. Try doing what I've done. A lot of people do, right? You're not going to type in anything. You're not going to complete any piece of work without a significant amount of AI being involved in it, because that's your job. That's what everyone's job is going to be sooner or later. It's like not using email and it's 2000. It's like not. It's like trying to talk by going to a person's house and talking to them rather than calling them up, right? So yeah, just this is the main thing. The future of work, right? Goldman Sachs predicted it, right? So like 30% of jobs, I think, get impacted. Vast majority of knowledge work jobs get impacted. What is the impact? It's up to you to decide. Hopefully it's that your productivity gets so great that you're able to do a lot more. Hopefully it's not that you lose your job because you were left on the wayside and never got into using ChatGPT or any one of these other apps.
Right. And Michaela, I want to throw it to you, and particularly with the creative work, ghost work spin on the question.
I was thinking about the skepticism, and I think it's a really healthy measure, because I think we should approach these tools with a skepticism and also critical thinking. Because one of my fears is like people depending on this technology so much that it becomes more of an oracle than an assistant. So we know that still this technology is not robust enough, not perfect. There is a lot of conversations about hallucinations. So for me, the interesting thing is like how you can take advantage of this, and as both Vic and Adil were saying, like amplifying your skills, but at the same time keep your critical thinking active and reactive to this. And this is something that we have seen in the debates about using ChatGPT in schools and education, and how to integrate this into the curriculum. And I fully support that we should. I was like talking about schools, like we are just outright banning the use of these tools, and you cannot ban it like trying to cover the sun with a hand, because people is going to get creative about this. I don't know if you saw, but there was this guy that connected ChatGPT to, because this school is like, we are going to admit only handwritten essays because we don't want people cheating with ChatGPT, and someone like connected a printer with like an arm. So the things that was coming out from ChatGPT were like printing as if it was like handwritten. And I know it's like a silly example, but for me, it's like the summon of like, you cannot deny the potential of these technologies, and you cannot just think that they are going to go away. So it's like, how do we integrate with this, with the most benefit for all? And for me, it comes back again to how do we redistribute wealth and the wealth created by this, because the risk of losing jobs is completely real, and it's not the same as other industrial transformations that we have seen in our history, because it's like becoming so quick. And it also is not just going for manual jobs, it's going for knowledge jobs. And so there is a lot of people that's going to be impact. And for me, it's like thinking the polarization of the wealth. Because, for example, if you replace a driver with a driverless car, and the person that owns that car, of course, is going to become more wealthy, more rich, and be able to buy a second car, a third car. And on the other hand, you have this person that is now unemployed. And there is also like another layer to thinking about the future of work. It's like how today people is being monitored by algorithms, and the state of surveillance that's being created by this. Because that's when I think like we should approach technology with this critical approach and thinking on where is good to apply it, and where we should apply it, and where we should not do it, and where we need human oversight, and where we need to continue doing this kind of work with human values at the front. So that's one of the concerns. And going to, for example, we were talking before on the document, talking about ghost work, thinking about how there is a lot of invisible workers that are kind of like doing a lot of works that imply like preparing the data sets, or seeing the cases where, for example, image recognition system cannot distinguish one thing from another, and you have to go to a human moderator, understanding language and context. And in those circumstances, you are seeing these kind of like second-class citizens that are being created, that are looking at violent pictures, pornographic pictures, violent language, trying to moderate all of these. And of course, the creative labor is severely impacted. I recently was speaking here in Argentina with the Association of Illustrators, and they were already seeing this. So, sorry, I don't know if it was a quote for me on the background, someone speaking, but we are seeing this, like a lot of people is losing their jobs, and we are not seeing mechanisms of replacement or redistribution of wealth that can like change this in any time soon.
Right. I think all of you made really great points. And I think two of the big ones were that AI is a tool, and the future that we have alongside it or underneath it will depend on how we prepare to use this tool, and that the genie's not going back into the bottle, right? Like Michaela, you said, you can't block the sun with your hand. So it's really important that instead of trying to stop a train, we figure out and how to position ourselves to how to best use it. And I think that brings up a really great question, because one of the pretty big discussions in the AI space are some of the issues around AI hallucinations, misinformation through AI, discrimination and bias. And there's this conflict that these technologies have all these great use cases, all this great potential, and we want to move forward and we want to innovate, but we want to make sure that we're approaching these issues thoughtfully so that we're not moving forward and exacerbating the problems that exist in society or exist in AI at this level. So I guess from each of your perspectives, how do you navigate that balancing act between there's issues, there's things that we need to improve, but there's also this unlimited potential and we want to move forward, but we want to move forward carefully. Adil, do you want to start on that one?
As an individual, every person must have their own personal philosophy for how to maximize the gains for themselves and for their loved ones. As a member of society, one must make the determination of where they want society to go and leverage the tools available to them. If you are one of the few people, not many people are using AI very much. If you're one of those few that is using it very much, you can use it to make major changes to society through things such as, if you're a bad actor, you can create a bunch of misinformation or create a bunch of good information and try to get somebody elected into office and so on. I think there is one higher level that is now opened up, a discussion on whether we should accelerate or decelerate. And the accelerationist movement, the effective accelerationist movement is, I think, one way in which people can end up aligning their philosophy and then start working towards it. That movement states that you should continuously be trying to build as much as possible because AI will solve our problems. If you believe in that, you should find a job in an AI field and try to get things done, try to build something. It's never been easier to build an application. It never has been. I've built a few in the last couple of months. It has never been easier to build an application on top of a platform that is so simple and straightforward and easy to use that will help you to build something. So if you want to make a big impact in the world, I think everyone should. You should just start using AI to A, benefit yourself, B, determine what your medium-term or lifetime types of goals are and try to impact those. And 3, try to do something regarding your philosophy on whether AI beings should exist alongside humans, what the relationship between humanity and the emergent artificial intelligent species is going to be, and try to do things associated with that based off of whatever your proclivities are.
That's a great answer. Michaela, I think for a spin on this answer from your perspective, you've worked in like regulatory, doing your work in Argentina, but you also work with creatives. And I think with both of those communities, on the regulatory side, there's you want to be innovative, you don't want to lose in the global race, but you want to protect your citizenship. And in the creative field, again, you want to be innovative, you want to compete and make sure you're generating work and that you're using all the tools available to you, but you want to also protect your creations and protect the community of creatives. So how do you, from those perspectives, think about the accelerationist and deaccelerationist movements?
It's a great question because what I'm thinking lately is that copyright has been like trying to put everything in the existing boxes. And for example, when we start to have software and we have to assign protection under copyright law, we end up like putting in the same box of a literary work because it was like this new thing that we don't know where this belongs and we're going to put it here. And I feel like something is happening in the same around the same with AI. It's a really tough question because for me, it's about who is picking up the pieces of the people that's going to be displaced or the people that's going to be. And I agree with Adil that there is like potential to do like fantastic things. But my concerns is like what we do with the people that is falling out of the scope of these technologies. And the people that, for example, here in Argentina doesn't have connectivity and doesn't have like access to the system, doesn't have the knowledge. So how are we going to reshape society to make sure that we're going to benefit everyone? Because I can understand like from the individual perspective saying like, okay, I can use this to benefit myself and my family, as Adil was saying. But for me, it's like how this is going to impact in the bigger picture. And when you go back to creatives, it was super interesting to see the reactions, because of course they are concerned, they are scared about AI replacing. And this was a sentiment that was changing really, really fast, because I started talking about AI and creativity, I think like 6 years ago, 5 years ago. And I was like warning people about what was coming. And creative people was like, AI is never going to replace us, because creativity is like a human trait. And now we are seeing like people getting really scared about this. It's like when people was laughing about Boston Dynamic robots falling apart, and now you're seeing Boston Dynamic robots doing choreographies with BTS. It's like now, Midjourney doesn't know how to draw a hand, and months later you have like really overcoming these difficulties. So it's like, how are we going to, sorry, I'm going to go back to circle back to a point. Like they were saying at some point, are you angry about the systems because they are taking out your work, or are you angry at the new artists and the people that is using prompts because they are taking away your jobs? And people were saying in that conference, like, I don't mind if someone is using AI to augment their creativity because they don't know how to draw, or maybe they don't know how to create something. But the thing is, like, I feel threatened in my livelihood. So going back again, it's like redistribution of wealth. If we want to ensure that AI is going to benefit humanity and is going to create a better state for us all, for me, it all circles back. And how are we going to pick up the pieces of the people that is being left out of the AI revolution?
Yeah, I think that's a really important point in that balancing the acceleration and deceleration, like who is being affected, how are we being affected? And I think that is a hard balance to draw. But Kalpa, I'm going to throw another spin onto this question for you, because I think you have a lot of experience with AI in large scale corporations. And I think that can create its own dynamics in terms of acceleration, deceleration. You have consumers and internal stakeholders that you have to please. So it's like you want to do the most, especially there's a lot of excitement in this space, but you want to make sure that you're doing the things that benefit your company in the long run. So both just generally in terms of acceleration, deceleration, but also from your position at a large scale company, how do you think about this conversation?
Yeah, well, I deal with those situations every single day, right? So I keep joking with my friends with ChatGPT and Gen AI. I mean, it has done good and bad to me personally. The good in a way that I have been exposed to a wide variety of issues and problems, opportunity, challenges that I could use AI to solve to some degree. Bad, jokingly, I said, you know what, I don't have breathing room out on my calendar right now. Everyone wants to consult in AI and wants to do something. So from the organizational perspective, how I like to see these things as, so folks come in, they ask for requests. Can I get OpenAI? Can I get AWS Bedrocks, different vendor tools, platforms, open source, right, to enable within organization? But you know that any corporations like ourselves, we have appropriate guardrails and control, put the controls in place that we can just allow folks to do things however they want, partly because we don't want to have another Samsung moment in Takeda in my company particularly. So it's a hard situation to be in, because we wanted to be innovative and we want to establish that experimental culture in the organization. At this, we want to allow folks to be able to go and try something, safely in a content environment, perhaps with less, restrictive data. But at the same time, we're also trying to be very careful on how we are going to do that. So we are currently working on a process, some kind of approach that helps people kind of fulfill the, current demands. At the same time, not stifling the innovation mindset, getting something into the place, but at the same time, not trying to do too much, within this. And the reason I'm bringing this is, look at how far we have come along in the past 6 months, right? So it was what, November, December was when OpenAI released LLMs. And now, like, all of a sudden we have Falcon, we have Llama, with just trained on a Windows machine, even a Mac, right? There's a lot of open source services. So we do not want to be investing on something today and in the spirit of trying to rush to get something done and go and become obsolete in the next 3 to 6 months. And from an organizational perspective, that's an investment approach. right? Oh, is this feasible for us to do? Do we want to necessarily, reinvent the world? And when I look at this from that implementation perspective, sometimes I also have to think about, are there platforms and tech companies coming up with some kind of AI infused solution, right? Generative AI in their product space? And the answer is yes, right? So, I do not want to be doing something in the company, just because I feel like I'm going to miss this hype moment. And I also know for a fact that these platform companies, Amazon, Stability AI, Databricks, Microsoft, they are all going to have something in their roadmap tightly integrated for us to be able to go and consume, right? So there is that balance as an organizational leader in terms of investment. But from the overarching standpoint of safeguards and risk mitigations perspective in organization, there's a big amount of effort that's already been placed in providing appropriate legal oversight and governance framework. So what does that mean, right? So we look at things around data, right? If someone wants ChatGPT, for example, or basic LLMs to be implemented, we are examining this data very closely, right? The hardest part is, as of today, we're only talking about data. Now we have to be a bit more granular and say, what kind of data is it, right? Can we categorize your data? Under what classification does this data falls under? It's not just data, right? And sometimes people come to us and say, hey, I'm not going to be using our internal company data. I'm going to go and source this external links, scrape a bunch of stuff, call this APIs. That's great, right? It's not exposing organizational data, but at the same time, we have to be very mindful about what was the source, what is the approach for you to get that external data, right? What is the methodology and approach for you to source and put that into our engine, right? So it's all about not just outbound, but also inbound. How are we thinking about this? There's secure data, policies. There's a data movement going on, which calls for data privacy and sovereignty. So a lot of these things, right? Having this access control list, risk mitigations, all of that. So it's a lot, it's a whole team. We have a dedicated task force just, in exploring and producing this updated guidance for the rest of the organization. And we are having to balance that expectations at the same time, not trying to do so much, right? Also just a little bit, right? Just to prove that excitement, just making sure that, folks get this productivity aspect of this as well. Yeah.
Okay. I think that's really important.
Yeah.
Did someone want to say something else on that before I switch gears? Okay, awesome. I think one recurring point here has been the importance of people adopting this technology. It's not going anywhere, and not being AI literate is going to be like not being computer literate. No one is going to hire someone who comes and says, you can only communicate with me through paper mail. I do not believe in email. I don't use the phone. You can only talk to me in person. These are things that people are going to have to become fluent and adept in to live in the future of our society. So for people who don't have you guys' experience and are coming at this new, what are the opportunities for them to get integrated in this world? What are the experiences they could be gathering? Where should they be getting their news? What are the things that they should be paying attention to? For those people in the audience who saw Artificial Intelligence 101 and they're like, today is the day I'm finally gonna learn all the basics and get caught up, and I'll be able to talk to people at work and my friends about it. What would you point them to? And I will, a couple, you can start on that.
Yeah, well, sure. Well, first of all, I'll make a call out to Adil. Follow him, right? I know that he shares lots of really good LinkedIn articles on AI stuff and all of that. He's been my source of news for and I know I haven't told you, Adil, but I keep following your news a lot. Thanks. To me, without trying to get too technical about a bunch of these things and ask you to go and couch this Google Scholar news articles and all of that, Twitter. I mean, I don't know why, but I have been finding lots of really good content on Twitter. Find the right people, balanced, right? You might not want to follow just technologists, but also policymakers, who are bringing a well, balanced view of the things, right? That's what I'm really trying to develop myself as, even though my background, is in computer scientist. I'm really trying to develop more as an information scientist and sort of a socio-technical person, right? So I go to Twitter, find everything, I skim results. I skim academic reports every week or so. I look at what latest and greatest of these labs are producing. I look at what policy centers are producing. I look at European rules regulation. I mean, what I mean by looking at, I just skim at it, and I'm not going to be expert, and I don't intend to be, but just having that surface information is going to help me a lot. So one word, Twitter for me. It has a great purpose. Yeah.
That's great. Adil, since you got a shout out in your one of the answers to this question, what do you think?
I'd say just use ChatGPT. Just like number one, if you pay for it, just pay for it. If you pay for it, then you're going to be incentivized through your own hacking yourself to use it. And then when you use it, you can use the browsing plugin to ask it every day, hey, what's the latest news? Guess what? It'll actually give you good answers. And you can interact with it in a conversational way to get more information. You can copy paste the entire contents of a new paper and throw it in there. So like, explain this to me like I'm 5 years old. And you don't need to use ChatGPT. You can use Poe.com that has a lot of different models. You can use any one of the many different models out there. You don't need to be following people that are saying 99% of people aren't using ChatGPT the right way and follow me, and so that I can guide you. You can do this yourself. Become effective at using AI in order to get knowledgeable about AI. Just accelerate yourself.
I think that's a really good point. It reminds me of like when people see a child and they're like, this child understands technology so well. It's like the child didn't go take a tech class. Every day they just spent a little bit of time on the internet and familiarize themselves with it slowly. So I think that's really good advice. Just use it. A lot of people wait for like this introduction, and it could be something as simple as, like you said, just looking up daily tasks, doing daily things. Michaela, what do you think?
I think there are good information out there. I agree, there is more information than ever if you want to understand how things work and the implications. I love going back to Twitter, and there are some accounts, Margaret Mitchell, Timnit Hebrew. I love their takes on the space. Shoaib Olanimi. And also there is a very good newsletter that I would recommend, that's TLDR on AI, which is kind of daily and has a really, really good sum up of what is going on. And of course, if you want to go deeper, I spend a lot of my day like browsing Google Scholar and papers and seeing what's coming up. And it's kind of funny, but it's like you have to educate your algorithms, your content algorithms, so they can provide for you the things that you are interested, but also always keeping like skeptical and critical thinking. Because Adil was saying like, go and use ChatGPT, and for me there is still things that we have things all about the hallucinations and the wrong answers. I was reading about the example of the time traveler, someone that was trying these adversarial attacks to trying to trick these models into kind of like crawl information about them. So for me, it's like, use these tools, but at the same time, keep being critical and trying to check the sources.
Perfect. Okay, we're almost out of time, so I'm going to ask one last question. And I think this is my favorite question for any panel, just to ask about predictions of the future. What are things you're excited about? We talked about this a little bit, but what are you excited about? What are you worried about? What are things that you're on the lookout for in the future of artificial intelligence? So I'm just going to go around Bakalpa, Michaela, and then Adil, if you want to go in that order.
Honestly, I don't know. It's a lot of things going on at the same time. I'd be very interested to hear what Michaela and Adil will have to say here. So
we'll come back to you.
Because I keep spending my time on transformers. I keep spending my time a lot of organizational work and a lot of excitement around out there. But also I have this human-centered, design as one of my background. I spent formative years of my PhD working on human-centered design and AI ethics. My PhD dissertation was around AI and machine learning discrimination, right? So, and right now I'm doing a lot of core scientific and engineering work. So with all of this, forces coming in, and good, positive and negative forces, I'm not able to produce a very clear view of where we're heading, but my hope is that we'll probably do something for the betterment of our society, right? So there's, we probably have to have that alignment in many ways. But good question, Dylan. But I don't think I could predict at this point. So, yeah.
Michaela, what do you got for us?
In terms of regulations, I think one contender that we are not seeing so much is consumer protection, consumer regulation. So we are talking a lot about how data protection regulations are impacting the way we think and we regulate AI. But for me in the future, maybe consumer protection regulations are going to have more impact if we continue to use these as users. And I don't know, because this is like more from a scholar perspective. From a personal perspective, I'm having AI anxiety sometimes, because things are, I have been like reading and working on this for so long, and I was able to catch up with the latest things. And today, if you miss a week of what is happening, if you blink, you're missing. So I think it's interesting that we cannot project like far reach from like 2 months, 3 months, what's going to happen.
Got it. Phil?
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that's going to happen very soon that we can pretty much be certain about, that are going to be changing the world. First, there is a Malthusian split that will be occurring multiple times, a fractal of splits in all of human society, in the haves and have-nots across the different modalities of technology. The one amazing thing that I hope will happen, that we're working towards its stability a lot, is the democratization of AI, so that people can get access to it. So for instance, maybe some schools in the US might be concerned about students using AI, but I can guarantee you the schools in Karachi that I work with do not give a crap, and those students don't have much of a chance in life anyway. So getting this kind of massive equalizer and having the information of the world at the fingertips from a conversational perspective is going to massively change their lives. So that's one thing that will be happening, the split between the augmented and the naturals, perhaps, right? This new cybernetic future that is coming within the next 10 to 20 years. Can you imagine? You'll never need to translate anything to a different language. You will never need to worry about knowledge that you do not know, or technology that you do not know how to operate. Already now you can do a lot of things with your car by looking at a YouTube video, but you won't need to leverage that either. Within a few years, within a few months, the ability to generate videos and images will be so amazing that you will not need to leverage data from outside. There will be licensed models that you can use. There will be creativity of your own. I don't believe my son is ever going to watch a TV show. I believe he will ask for a TV show to be made for him, and he will watch it and consume it. I don't believe he'll need to play a video game from the past that was made for him in the past. He will have generative video games made for him. But all of these things, my view is very similar to what Max Tegmark said in his Lex Friedman interview, which I recommend you guys watch. He said that humanity is hurtling towards a cliff, and the closer we get, the more scenic the views are, which means that these are all the beautiful things that we, especially we few who leverage AI and are closer to the source rather than to the end of the consumer pipeline, we few will get to experience these majestic beauties of what is possible through this centauric, the cybernetic world that we're entering into, until eventually we do create systems that kill us.
Okay. Sounds like there's a lot to look forward to, a lot to not know yet, and a lot to be prepared for. So on that note, I want to thank all of our panelists. I really appreciate you dedicating the time, and thank all the attendees. The recording of this event will be available on our YouTube and our socials shortly. And to learn more about the Foundry, you can visit us on our socials. As a reminder, this event was the first in a series of events about AI, gearing up for our policy hackathon. So look out for our next event, which will be about AI and intellectual property in a couple of weeks. And with that, thank you all to the panelists, thank you all to the attendees, and everyone have a great day.